Now we're going to take a look at how to use Gimp to work with your drawings that you've either scanned or photographed and brought in. This particular exercise is going to focus on the scanned version, and I'm going to have a separate one that will do the photograph version if you don't have access to a scanner. If you have access to a scanner, I highly recommend that you do that. When you scan in your drawings on the scanner, I would tend to bring them in grayscale, and I would set them at 200 dots per inch. That's going to be kind of a standard that we're going to be using throughout this, and it just makes it easier if you keep the resolution the same. So I would be thinking in terms of 200 dots per inch for pretty much everything that you do. In case you don't have Gimp yet, I want to show you where to get it. Okay, and here is a window. Go in your browser, go to gimp.org, gimp.org. You'll see that there's a section up here. There's download, there's release notes. I'd go to the download section. I would say show downloads for whatever version you're using. I'm using OS X because I'm on a Mac. If you're using Windows, you'll be on a Windows. I click on that, and it appears that it already came up that way anyways, but if I clicked Windows, there's Gimp for Windows. Again, make sure you're in whatever version you've got. I would go ahead and download it directly and then install it from there. So that's how you get Gimp, and you're going to want to get it on your machine. Once you have it on your machine, you want to start it up. And I'll start it right from the beginning. There's my Gimp app. And in a second, here we go. Now it brought it up in the way that I had my last Windows set up. If you don't get these images on your screen, the ones that I recommend you open up under Windows are Toolbox, Layers, Navigation. If you click under Dockable Dialogues, you'll see all these. There's Layers, there's Navigation, and Toolbox might just come up. Tool Options, I'm not sure. You want that toolbox. I haven't closed any. Oh, there's a new toolbox. So you're fine. It should come up like that. If not, go ahead and click on those and bring them in. For example, if I didn't have them, let's see. Let's say I had shut those down for some reason, or they didn't come up. I could go to Windows, Dockable Dialogues, Tool Options. That's not what I want. New toolbox. And there's a toolbox. I can bring it over here. I can drag it out. I also like to have Windows tool options, and that's this little fellow right here, and you can put that right in here, I guess. Okay, well, I'm putting it right there. I'm trying to dock it in there to see if it'll let me dock it. And it won't. There. So what I did there is I just dragged where it said tool options and put it right under my toolbox because that's where I want it. I can go ahead and stretch that out or leave it just like it is. Make it a little taller, doesn't matter, shows me a little more. I also want to see layers. There's my layer window. I'm going to put that up in this corner. And I want, dockable dialogues, navigation window, navigation. Okay. There. So now I've got my layers, I've got my navigation windows there. Now we're going to open up the drawing that you created when you scanned your black and white illustrated perspective. In that case, this is mine. Now, I got a little notice about convert to grayscale working space. It really doesn't matter whether you keep or convert. Since Gimp's asking me, I'm going to say convert. Okay, I've got a couple issues with this drawing. The first one, of course, is, I'm going to go to my window and see if I can look at the whole thing. It's up and down and I want it sideways. To fix that, I go Image, Transform, Rotate 90 degrees clockwise. Now it's going in the right direction. My next issue is that it's crooked. And my last issue is, and you might not be able to see it real great on the screen here, but what I've got is I've got a bunch of, I call it noise. It's just gray. Let's zoom in and see if it shows up. I'll navigate over there. See all that gray in there? I want to get rid of that. You can see it better right here. I want this to be black and white. If you'll also notice, some of my lines are fairly black and others are coming in kind of gray. And I want them all to be black lines. So how am I going to do this? Well, let's start with the easy thing. First of all, we're going to want to rotate the image to get it squared so it's not a little bit crooked. If you'll notice, it tips down to a little this side. How I'm going to do that, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new layer. Click to create a new layer right here, create a new layer and add it to the image. Here's my new layer and I'm going to call it Canvas. And if I can spell canvas. There's canvas. I want to drag it, left click, grab it, pull it down below this class scan image, which is the one that I just opened. All right, this canvas, what I want to do, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my picture that I brought in and you'll see there's nothing there. I want to make this a white sheet. So to do that, I click on the color and it's already set up to white. If it wasn't, if it was green or blue or anything like that, if you go in the far upper left-hand corner and click as far as you can, you'll notice everything turned to 100 except for this, which is 141. That's your white. Hit OK. And you'll see that square's white. I then go Tools, Paint Tools, Bucket Fill. When I do that, I get this little paint bucket. As soon as you see there's a cross there, there's a no paint bucket, and then as soon as I get on the actual drawing, it changes over. I left click, I wait, and it basically gives me a white sheet of paper to work on. I call that my canvas. You'll see why that makes sense in a minute. I'm now going to go back to my original layer, that class scan, and here I do something. I don't like to work on the original drawing that I brought in just in case I screw things up. So I tend to go right click, duplicate layer. And this new layer, which is the same as the other one, you can kind of see, there's my first one, there's my second one, just a copy of the first one. that's going to be my working layer. Again, if I mess this up, I've always got this one that I can fall back on. So let's straighten this out. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here, up in this menu bar. This is called a ruler, and you'll notice that it moves around with my cursor. I left click and hold, and I bring down a guideline. Now I'm going to bring down 4 of them. This is just a nice straight line to work from, and it shows me how crooked I am. I can do it from the side, which I'm also going to do. In this case, I'm lining them up with my borders. All right, so what I want to see is how much I have to turn this drawing to make it straight so it's not crooked. And you can see how crooked it is up here. There's a straight line, and this one's crooked. So in order to do that, I make sure, all right, I'll get zoomed in a little more, maybe a little less. I make sure I'm in my proper layer. By clicking it, it should be highlighted. I then go Tools, Transform Tools, Rotate. Okay, and now if I just click on my mouse, click my mouse with my left button, and then I turn it, notice I'm starting to turn the image. Okay, and I'm going to turn that to look at the top line and how before it was like this and now it's nice and straight. The side lines look straight. That looks pretty good. Hit rotate and we're done. Okay, at this point I'm also going to turn off my canvas and you'll see why in a few minutes. Now, I actually have an issue here. Let's turn this off. Let's turn on canvas. And we look to be okay. Okay, so what I want to do next, I'm going to get rid of these guidelines because they're going to irritate me. To get rid of them, I can just go up to View, and someplace there should be a Show Guides is checked off. You can uncheck that. Now, if you didn't want to, if you wanted to get rid of them, I believe you can use your Move tool. When it turned red, left click it, drag it back to the ruler, and it just disappears. That's another way you can actually get rid of the guides instead of just turning them off. Drag it over, make it go away. Left click, drag it, make it go away. Another thing I've noticed up top, notice how my ruler says 0, 250, 500, 750. That's pixels. I don't want pixels. What I want is inches. And let's see if I can there. If I scroll up, I can come up to inches. And now it says 0. I can see this drawing is about 8 inches wide and about 5 1/4 inches tall. We're going to change that later on, but for now, we're going to leave that right like it is. All right, so I want to get rid of this noise. The simplest way to do this in Gimp is go up to Colors, go to Curves, and you'll get this menu here. And you can move this line. I'm going to move the window over here so I can see my drawing. Notice how that's kind of black. These are light gray, a darker gray, and then I've got all this noise in here. Well, if I left click on here and I start to drag that, the drawing starts getting white, but I lose some of my line work. What I'm trying to do is drag it to where I get rid of my background and not a lot more. When I say background, it's this gray stuff in here. So let's move it, give it a second. All right, looks like most of it's gone. Okay, then to make my lines dark again, I click on the bottom one and I start to move it over. And you'll see the lines got darker, and I can move it over more. and they got darker. And I can keep moving it and moving it and moving it. When I get it there, they disappeared. Don't ask me why. Oh my goodness. Well, apparently I've done something hideous with this, so we're just going to hit cancel. We're going to try that again. Colors, curves, slide this one over about 2 boxes, maybe even just 1 box. That gets rid of most of my background. And then I want to slide this one over a fair amount. So now you see how those lines are all looking black and the background's gone. That looks pretty good. This is going to vary on your drawing, how far you have to slide these. Then hit OK. And now notice these lines aren't gray. The background's gone. And it's a nice, crisp drawing, which is just what we want. At this point, I would recommend that you save your drawing. I'm going to go File, Save, and it's going to go where my last drawing was from. I'm going to call it 2020 Class Scan. I'm going to call it 2020 Class Perspective. Hang on. Let's see exactly what I'm going to call it. I'm going to call it, that's what I said at the bottom of the assignment, 2020 Class Perspective Black and White JPEG. All right, so let's call it 2020 Class Perspective BW. Oops. BW, and this isn't an XFF file, this is a Gimp file. I'm going to save that. Save. All right, I'm going to hit yes, replace it. It just so happens I was doing some work on it earlier. So now I've saved it, and now what I want to do is, let's click back in this so we get our menus back. We should get our menus back. I have no idea why our menus disappeared. Windows. Layers. Windows. Navigation. Huh. I have no idea why it did that, but we've fixed it. All right. So now this next step that I'm going to do is not as important now, but it will be important later. So what I want you to do is I want you to go into you're still in your working layer. I want you to zoom in, and I want you to go select by color. Make sure your threshold down here is set to around 150. Click on any black part that you see. It has to be in the black. And when I did that, you notice I got these little lines going all around my black parts. I go Edit, Copy, Edit, Paste as, New Layer. And now if you'll look, I have a new layer. It says Pasted Layer up above the layer I was working on before. And both layers, those 2 layers are on. I'm going to change the name of that by double-clicking it. I'm going to call it Line Work. Okay, if I were to turn off my original layer, what you'll see is all I have is the lines with the selection indication around them. To get rid of that, I go Select None. And now you'll just see the lines. So now what I have is a Gimp layer that only has, excuse me, that only has the black lines on it. And if I turn on my canvas layer behind it, now you get a nice white drawing with the black lines on it. This is going to be handy to have available to you because when you do this, when you color your drawing, In the past, every time you've colored an illustration on bond, you've had to do the color, which takes 15 minutes to an hour, and then you've had to go through and retrace all of your black lines. Well, if you use Gimp like I just did it, if you do a scan of your black and white drawing and then pull out the black and make it as a separate layer of just black lines, you don't have to trace your work anymore. You can scan in your color drawing before you trace it and just put this over it. So that's going to be helpful later. I'd suggest that you go ahead and do that now. Let's save it. File, save. Now that I've got this drawing saved, I want to make sure that the image is the size that I want it. So I'm going to go up to Image. I don't know. I'm going to try Scale Image and let's see what happens. Okay, if I go to Scale Image, what you're going to see is the image is 7.793 inches by 5.54. If yours says something like 2388 by whatever, these numbers, check over here. You want this in inches. Inches. I now know my drawing is 7.7 inches wide and it's 5.44 tall. My resolution is now at 300 by 300. I'm going to want to make a couple changes. One, I'd like it to be as close to 8.5 by 11 as possible. In order to do that, I'm going to make sure this chain is click shut, not open like that. Click shut. I'm going to type in 8.5, a width of 11, and then it will automatically say, well, it's 7.68. If I'd put in a width of 8.5, a height of 8.5, because I'm trying to get my 8.5 by 11 drawing, 8.5, then all of a sudden the width would be 12.177, which is bigger than I want. I only wanted 8.5 by 11. So let's go ahead and change that back to 11. And now I'm going to wind up with a drawing that's 11 inches wide and a little less than 8.5 inches tall. I'm going to change my resolution to 200. And hopefully 8.11. Let's try 11. And there it is. I had to go back up and change that. So now I've got a drawing. It's 200 dots per inch. It's 11 inches wide and 7.6 inches tall, which is fine. Hit Scale. Hit Save. Now I'm going to go ahead and export this. File, Export. And we're going to want to export this as a JPEG. That's probably not what it will start out as, so you have to change it to Select File Type by Extension. And you click on the plus sign here. And the extension you want to use is JPEG image. Make sure it's set to go to the right place. In my case it is. Export. I'm going to go replace because I don't care about whether or not I replace it. For quality, I want to set this up to 100. Export. Now I want to show you, and I still don't know why my dialogues keep disappearing, but we can always get them back. We don't need them anymore. Why did I do that? Well, I did that because in order to print this out, because you need to print this to color it, you're going to print this on 8.5 by 11 inches to color it. I can go File, I could try printing it from Gimp, but now there's a whole lot of settings, which will come up like this with, you have to select your printer, which is fine, copy's fine, reverse collate. You're going to see you should really check page setup, because right now the paper's going the wrong way. It's harder than what I'm about to show you. So I'm going to hit cancel. That's if I want to print directly from Gimp as a Gimp drawing. But since we saved a JPEG, I can grab my JPEG, open it, and it's going to open up in some program, probably in Windows it might be Paint or Image Editor or whatever you have. In Mac's case it'll be Preview, and then I can just print right from that. So I could go File, Print, and if I were to hit Print, it would print a black and white copy to my printer. I'm going to make sure it prints a black and white copy, and then I'm going to go ahead and send that to print. So now you've got your black and white drawing scanned into Gimp, saved on your computer, and you were able to print a copy on white paper because you did it on yellow trace, but now you have a piece on white paper that you can go ahead and color. And if you screw up the one you colored, you can print as many as you need to do. So for now, we're good with part 5 on the bottom of your final, step 5 on the bottom of your handout. If you didn't use a scanner and used a camera, please go to the next one, part 5 regarding camera pictures, and I'm going to give you a video that'll show you how I do that in Gimp. It's a little more complicated to try and straighten it out because the camera tends to bring in a lot more noise. That will be it for this video, and there will be more to follow.